Redditor one. I've always harbored a quiet fascination with the unexplained, a yearning to glimpse the extraordinary even in the midst of an ordinary night. Looking back, there are two events that have forever altered my perception of what might be lurking just beyond the veil of our everyday reality. I never imagined that my life would be punctuated by such uncanny encounters, yet those nights remain seared into my memory with an intensity that refuses to fade. It began on a cool evening when I was driving around the city with my girlfriend and her best friend. We were cruising along the highway, the rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt providing a comforting cadence as we chatted and laughed. The city lights blurred past in a cascade of neon and shadow, and for a while, everything seemed perfectly normal. But then, almost as if the universe had decided to insert a moment of bewilderment into our routine drive, we all saw it. There, in the vast inky canvas of the night, a very bright light streaked across the sky. At first glance, I assumed it must be a plane. After all, the light was moving at an altitude where I would normally expect to see one. However, this object was different. It shone with an intensity that far surpassed any aircraft, and its speed was nothing short of astonishing. There was no tail, no contrail, nothing to mark its passage through the heavens, and it moved in a manner that defied any conventional explanation. The light wasn't erratic, but it wasn't following a predictable path either. It darted with an almost purposeful precision, too fast for any vehicle I'd ever witnessed. In that fleeting moment, time seemed to slow, and the world outside my window transformed into a theater of inexplicable wonders. I remember glancing over at my girlfriend, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and trepidation, while her best friend remained silent, too stunned to utter a single word. Despite the strangeness of what we had just seen, we continued our drive, our minds reeling with disbelief yet not daring to alter our course. The object was gone as quickly as it had appeared, swallowed by the night with no trace left behind. Just minutes later, while the residual shock still hummed in the air, my girlfriend's phone buzzed unexpectedly. It was a missed call, and accompanying it was a voicemail. With hesitant curiosity, she pressed play. The sound that erupted from the tiny speaker was unlike anything I had ever heard. A heavily distorted, robotic voice that carried an eerie, mechanical quality. The words were indecipherable, twisted into garbled sounds that resonated with a cold, otherworldly chill. As we drove along a familiar road leading into quiet neighborhoods, I couldn't help but notice that something was off. The streetlights, which usually lined the road in steady, comforting intervals, were inexplicably dark. Their absence magnified the surreal atmosphere that had already taken hold of the night. The combination of that anomalous light, the strange voicemail, and the unexpected darkness of the street lights all converged to create a moment that felt lifted from the pages of a science fiction thriller. I tried to rationalize it at the time. Perhaps it was all a bizarre coincidence, a series of unrelated oddities that had aligned in one fateful evening. Yet, even as I tried to convince myself of the mundane, my heart pounded with a disquiet that I couldn't shake. In the following days, that night replayed in my mind like a vivid, unyielding dream, challenging the boundaries of what I believed to be possible. Then there was the second encounter, a separate experience that added another layer to the mystery and left me questioning the nature of our universe even further. It was a cool, clear night sometime later when I decided to take my dog out for a walk around the neighborhood. The sky was unusually studded with stars, every celestial point of light piercing the darkness with an almost tangible clarity. I had my iPod playing softly in my ears, a steady soundtrack to my solitary stroll, when something caught my attention. I was walking along a quiet street, the air crisp and still, when I noticed a dark spot moving slowly across the sky. At first, I thought it was just a cloud passing in front of the stars, but something about its movement compelled me to stop dead in my tracks. I raised my eyes toward the heavens and was met with an image that defied conventional description. A vast, floating, completely black shape that resembled a football field suspended in the night. It was so utterly devoid of light that I could immediately distinguish it from the scattered points of brilliance in the sky. There was no hum, no rush, not even the distant murmur of the wind that usually filled such moments with quiet sound. It was as if the object existed in its own realm of silence and darkness, moving with a deliberate, almost hypnotic grace high above me. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to process the sheer absurdity of what I was witnessing. For a long, breathless minute, I watched as the dark spot traversed the sky, its movement measured and purposeful, until it finally passed overhead and disappeared into the depths of the cosmos. In that moment, the ordinary world around me seemed to pause, as if the universe itself had taken a breath and whispered a secret that was meant only for those brave enough to look up and listen. I could only mutter to myself, "What the duck was that?" The shock of it all sent a shiver down my spine, and for reasons I still struggle to articulate, I felt as though I had just been given a brief, tantalizing glimpse into a realm far beyond our everyday comprehension. At the time, had you asked me, I might have confidently declared both events to be the work of aliens. A natural, if unsettling conclusion drawn by the wide-eyed wonder of youth and a mind craving the extraordinary. But now, looking back with the tempered perspective of experience, I can only say that they were both unidentified flying objects. Enigmatic phenomena that defied the neat categories of explanation. I never found a logical answer that satisfied the intense, visceral impression they left on me. Instead, these experiences have lingered like ghostly echoes, each one a persistent reminder that our world harbors mysteries far greater than we dare to admit. In the days that followed that first night, I found myself obsessively searching for answers. I would sit in the quiet of my living room, the dim glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across the floor, and replay the events in my head. Every detail, the blinding brightness of the unidentified light, the cold mechanical distortion of that strange voicemail, the eerie absence of streetlights, felt interwoven into a tapestry of inexplicable wonder and dread. I began to scour online forums and websites dedicated to unexplained aerial phenomena, and to my surprise, I discovered that I was not alone. There were countless others who had witnessed similar events, particularly those elusive black triangle sightings and other bizarre aerial manifestations. The realization that my experience was part of a broader, more unsettling pattern both comforted and unnerved me. Even now, on nights when the sky is clear and the silence of the world outside feels almost too deep, I find myself glancing upward, half expecting that familiar, inexplicable glow or that vast, dark shape to reappear. There is a strange allure in the possibility that somewhere out there, amidst the billions of stars, the extraordinary is unfolding. A silent drama that unfolds beyond our understanding. I am left with an enduring question. What are these objects, and what is their purpose? Are they remnants of technology far beyond our current capabilities? Or are they something altogether different? Portals to a realm where the laws of physics are rewritten and the impossible becomes mundane. Despite the rational explanations that some might offer, the vividness of my recollections refuses to be diminished by logical discourse. The memory of that robotic voice, distorted and eerie, still haunts me. The sound of it over the hum of our car's engine, accompanied by the unsettling darkened streets, remains one of the most vivid auditory imprints of my life. Similarly, the image of that colossal, pitch-black field moving silently across the star-studded sky is forever etched into my mind, a reminder that not every mystery can be explained away by science or dismissed as a trick of the light. I carry these memories with me, not as sources of fear, but as quiet testaments to the unfathomable vastness of the unknown. They have taught me that, in a universe as immense and complex as ours, there are phenomena that elude simple explanation. In a way, these encounters have become a part of who I am, a constant, enigmatic presence that compels me to keep looking up, to continue questioning the fabric of reality, even when answers remain elusive. And so, whenever I find myself driving down a quiet highway at night, or taking a solitary walk with my dog under a tapestry of stars, I do so with the awareness that the cosmos may have secrets it has yet to reveal. I remain ever vigilant, my eyes trained on the heavens, ready to witness again the inexplicable phenomena that once shattered the comforting normalcy of my world. In those moments, I feel both the thrill of discovery and the weight of uncertainty. A reminder that sometimes, the universe chooses to speak in whispers and flashes of light, leaving us with more questions than answers, and a lingering sense that, in the vast darkness above, we are never truly alone. Redditor 2. I've been waiting for this. I never really understood what that waiting meant until that humid summer night on the boardwalk, when everything shifted into a realm that defied explanation. I was a wide-eyed kid at my first ever job, standing behind the counter of a small candy store, tucked into one of Wildwood's busy boardwalks, in what I can only recall as the summer of either 203. I held a tray of fudge samples, trying to muster enthusiasm as I handed them out to passers-by, all while secretly keeping an eye on the vast expanse of ocean that ran parallel to our little slice of neon paradise. That night, as the last few customers trickled away and the boardwalk lights began to hum their lullaby, I found a moment to step away from the sugar and salt of the candy counter. The salty tang of the sea mixed with the sugary aroma of chocolate and caramel, creating a bittersweet symphony that only a summer night like this could compose. I leaned against the cool glass of the storefront window, my gaze drifting over the dark, rolling waves. I had always felt an inexplicable pull toward the ocean, the way the tide caressed the sand, the persistent murmur of the water against the pier. But tonight, that pull was magnified by something entirely unexpected. Out there, suspended above the ink-black water, a red light shone with a steady, unnerving glow. It wasn't the dancing, shifting beam of a boat or the familiar gleam of a lighthouse. No, this light hovered high, too deliberate and unwavering to be anything mundane. I stared, transfixed, as if the light itself had reached into me and demanded my attention. The beach, usually a place of comfort and predictability, now seemed to host a secret ritual of its own. My heart beat a little faster, a slow thump in sync with the sound of distant, crashing waves. I remember how I tried to rationalize it. It's just a reflection, I whispered to myself, though the words felt feeble against the magnitude of what I was witnessing. For several long, agonizing moments, I lost track of everything else. The sticky feel of fudge on my fingertips, the chill that crept up my spine, even the soft chatter of a passing couple. Then, as if drawn by the sudden need to tend to real life, a group of people approached the counter, their voices light and dismissive of any peculiarities. I forced a smile as I offered samples, my mind still half adrift with the image of that red light. Once the bustle subsided, I dared to steal another glance toward the ocean. The spot where the light had been was now empty, swallowed by the dark sea and the night sky. A chill that wasn't entirely due to the cool summer breeze settled over me. I wondered if it had been a trick of my imagination, a fleeting trick of light and shadow playing on my mind. Yet the memory burned with a clarity that mocked my rationality. I couldn't shake the image. In the following days, I found myself haunted by that night. During slow moments at work, as I handed out more fudge samples with a mechanically polite smile, I felt eyes on me from corners I couldn't pinpoint. I caught myself glancing out the window, half expecting to see that red glow again. But each time, there was nothing but the familiar dark silhouette of the boardwalk and the distant, indifferent ocean. I began to notice small details that I'd previously overlooked. The hum of the boardwalk at night, usually comforting in its consistency, now seemed to vibrate with a hidden urgency. The sea breeze carried a scent that wasn't entirely salty but hinted at something acrid and foreign. Late at night, when the boardwalk was nearly empty, the crunch of my shoes on the pavement would echo too loudly, as if the dark itself were listening. I started questioning every sound, every shadow, my mind racing through possibilities that were both absurd and terrifying. There was one quiet moment when a coworker, a kid not much older than I, sidled up to me as we were closing up. His eyes darted nervously as he muttered, "Did you see that light last night?" I froze for a split second, surprised that he had noticed the same thing. I nodded, but words failed me as the weight of unspoken terror filled the air between us. He quickly added, "I thought I was imagining it." And just like that, the moment dissolved into the mundane responsibilities of our shift, leaving me with a gnawing sense of dread I couldn't quite explain. Each night thereafter, I felt increasingly isolated by a secret that only I seemed to understand. The boardwalk, once a beacon of carefree summer nights, now became a stage for my private anxieties. I would catch my reflection in a shop window, a pale, drawn face with eyes too wide and alert for someone dealing in candy and small talk. I started to wonder if my mind was playing tricks on me, if the stress of the job had conjured up specters in the dark. One evening, after a particularly long day, I decided to step outside for a breath of fresh air. The humid night was thick with the promise of rain, and the usual cacophony of distant laughter and clinking boardwalk games was oddly muted. I wandered down the slick pavement, my footsteps echoing softly in the emptiness. I felt compelled to return to the beach, to that spot where the red light had so briefly illuminated my world with its silent, mysterious message. As I neared the edge of the boardwalk, the sound of the sea grew louder, more insistent. The beach was deserted, the sand damp and cool underfoot. I paused at the boundary where the wooden planks met the wide, open expanse. My eyes strained in the dark, searching for any sign of the light. For a long moment, I saw nothing but the undulating, infinite blackness of the water and the occasional glimmer of distant lights from far-off boats. Then, almost imperceptibly, I thought I saw it again, a faint, pulsating red that seemed to hover just above the horizon. This time, however, the red light was accompanied by a subtle, low hum that vibrated through the soles of my feet. I couldn't tell if it was real or a trick of the imagination, but its resonance felt deeply unsettling. I felt as if the sound were crawling up my legs, seeping into my bones. I took a hesitant step closer, my mind screaming that I should retreat. But my feet carried me forward nonetheless. In that moment, every instinct in my body told me that I was standing on the threshold of something inexplicably dangerous. The red glow pulsed softly, as if beckoning me closer with its rhythmic, hypnotic cadence. I remembered the countless times I had looked out from behind that candy store window, longing for a glimpse of something extraordinary, something that would break the monotony of my everyday existence. Now, faced with this surreal phenomenon, I was filled with an overwhelming mixture of terror and a bizarre, almost desperate curiosity. I whispered to myself, "I've been waiting for this," as if the universe had finally decided to answer a question I had never quite articulated. The humming red light soon began to waver, its intensity dimming until it vanished completely, leaving behind only the relentless sound of the ocean and my own rapid breathing. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, a lone figure on a quiet beach, struggling to reconcile what I had seen with the cold, indifferent reality of the night. The darkness seemed to press in on me, and I felt an inexplicable sense of loss, as if a door had been closed that I hadn't even known was open. Returning to the boardwalk, I tried to convince myself that it was just a fleeting illusion, a trick of the light caused by heat haze or my own overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew that the red light had been something else entirely, something not of this world, or perhaps something that had slipped through the cracks of our known reality. In the days that followed, my work at the candy store continued as if nothing had changed. I continued to hand out fudge samples, all the while feeling as if I were a keeper of a secret too vast to share. The memory of that red light lingered in every shadow and every reflective surface, a reminder of the night when the mundane met the inexplicable. There were nights when I lay awake in my small apartment, the events replaying in my mind with relentless clarity. The texture of the boardwalk, the taste of fudge on my tongue, the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in the quiet hours. All merged into a single, unyielding tapestry of unease. I began to notice oddities around me, a car that would drive by with its headlights off, a silhouette in a window that vanished as soon as I blinked. The world seemed to have shifted imperceptibly, as if that one encounter with the red light had set a chain of events into motion that I couldn't control. Even now, when I pass by the boardwalk on late summer nights, I find myself drawn to the water's edge, scanning the horizon for a hint of that eerie glow. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of a scarlet glimmer in the distance, only for it to dissolve into the darkness before I can fully grasp its nature. I've learned to live with the uncertainty, to accept that some mysteries are meant to haunt us quietly, lingering on the edges of our consciousness like a half-remembered dream. Yet, every so often, a chill runs down my spine, and I can't help but wonder if the red light was merely a prelude, a silent invitation to a realm that has now permanently intruded into my life. I still don't have all the answers. Was it a warning, a call from somewhere beyond, or simply a trick of the light and my own fragile mind? The questions swirl in my head, unanswered and insidious, just as the night had left its mark on me. I remember the precise moment when I looked away and the light disappeared, leaving behind only the emptiness of the sea. I've never seen anything like that again, yet I feel its presence in every shadow that moves too slowly and every whisper of wind that carries secrets from the deep. Now, every time I hear the hum of the ocean or see the boardwalk lights flicker against the night, I'm transported back to that surreal, terrifying moment. I know that I've been forever changed by that encounter, marked by a memory that refuses to fade. The red light remains a silent testament to the mysteries that lie just beyond our everyday reality, a reminder that some nights, the ordinary can slip away, leaving us alone with the unknown. And so I wait, as I always have, on the precipice of that unexplainable encounter, hoping against hope that one day I might glimpse its truth again, even as the darkness around me whispers that some secrets are better left undiscovered. Redditor 3. I've never told anyone this before, but there's a night I can't forget. A night when the stars whispered secrets that shattered the boundary between the known and the inexplicable. I was on a flight from Virginia to Chicago, seated by the window in a quiet, late evening journey that felt like a pause between one life and another. The airplane had just reached its cruising altitude, and the hum of the engines was the only sound as I gazed out into the inky darkness. I found solace in the endless expanse above, my eyes tracing the familiar outlines of constellations. Cassiopeia, with its regal sweep, dominated the sky, its cluster of stars a silent testament to ancient myths and mysteries. Then, in a heartbeat, everything shifted. Out of the infinite canvas of black, a golden fireball burst into view. It was a brief, brilliant flare, a luminous orb, larger than a kickball, that darted across my field of vision in a way that defied ordinary explanation. For an instant, time seemed to stretch, and I watched, transfixed, as this incandescent object zipped in and out of sight. Its glow was not harsh or blinding, but burned with an almost organic intensity, as if it were alive, pulsing with energy beyond the natural order. My mind raced to rationalize the impossible. Surely it was nothing more than a satellite reflecting the sun's last rays, a mundane explanation for an otherwise extraordinary phenomenon. Yet, even as I told myself that, a chill crept along my spine. The fireball carried with it an unsettling warmth, a heat that prickled my skin, and for a split second, I was overcome by a sense of being touched by something otherworldly. I blinked, half expecting the vision to dissolve into the routine humdrum of a normal flight. But when I opened my eyes, it had vanished, leaving only the eternal twinkle of distant stars. For the rest of that flight, I couldn't shake the memory. I found myself repeatedly glancing out the window, desperate to catch another glimpse of that elusive golden light. The usual murmur of conversation and the clatter of service in the cabin faded into an eerie silence in my ears, as if the entire aircraft had been drawn into a shared secret. I felt isolated in a crowd, my inner world now a tumult of questions and a dawning fear that something beyond the realm of everyday explanation had brushed past me. I remember the feel of the cool, recycled air and the steady vibration of the plane as I sat there, haunted by the image. Every so often, the darkness outside would flicker with reflections of starlight, and I'd search desperately for the golden spark that had upended my quiet journey. Other passengers appeared lost in their own worlds, untroubled by the vast mysteries unfolding just beyond the glass, but I knew what I had seen, and that knowledge settled over me like a shroud. After landing in Chicago, I tried to convince myself that it was all a trick of the light, a satellite perhaps, or a stray fragment of space debris catching the fleeting glow of the sun before disappearing into the void. I reassured myself with logic, recalling that the night sky is full of wonders that sometimes defy immediate understanding. Yet, deep down, I sensed that my experience was not so easily explained. In the quiet moments that followed, I would catch myself staring up at the darkened sky, as if expecting that mysterious presence to reappear and answer the silent questions it had left behind. In the days that turned into weeks, the memory of that golden fireball began to infiltrate my thoughts in subtle, persistent ways. Lying in bed at night, I would replay that moment over and over in my mind. The sudden blaze of molten gold against a backdrop of infinite darkness, the palpable rush of adrenaline, and that lingering, inexplicable warmth that seemed to cling to my skin long after the vision had faded. I began to wonder if I had unwittingly witnessed a glimpse of something not meant for human eyes, a spark of a cosmic intelligence that moved through the universe in a language of light and heat. Driven by both dread and an insatiable need to understand, I started researching astronomical phenomena. I read about meteors and satellites, about the intricate dance of celestial mechanics, hoping to find some clue that could demystify my encounter. Every explanation I encountered fell short. A meteor, I learned, typically burns through the atmosphere in a fiery blaze, its trajectory predictable and its presence brief. A satellite, on the other hand, moves in a consistent orbit, its glimmer a steady reflection of sunlight rather than a sudden golden burst. None of the scientific accounts could capture the peculiar, almost deliberate motion of that fireball, how it darted across Cassiopeia and then, just as quickly, vanished without a trace. The more I searched, the more the incident began to reveal its darker edges. There were nights when the stars seemed to conspire in silent patterns, when shadows moved with a life of their own, and the air itself felt charged with an energy that was both thrilling and terrifying. I found that even the most mundane moments of my life were now tinted with the possibility of the inexplicable. A reflective surface in a darkened room would catch a glint of gold. A sudden burst of light in a clouded sky would set my heart racing with anticipation and dread. It was as if that single, fleeting moment had fractured the normalcy of my world, opening a crack through which the extraordinary seeped in. I tried to share my experience with friends, but their responses were a mix of skeptical chuckles and polite dismissals. They insisted that it must have been a satellite or an atmospheric anomaly, a trick played by my tired eyes. Yet, as I spoke, I could see a hint of uncertainty flickering in their expressions, as if my words had somehow disrupted their comfortable beliefs about the world. Even those who prided themselves on rationality found themselves unable to fully dismiss the possibility that there was more to the universe than met the eye. In the solitude of my thoughts, I began to see the golden fireball as a symbol, a beacon of the unknown that challenged every certainty I held. I would lie awake in the dead of night, my mind wandering through endless scenarios where that fiery apparition was not merely a random occurrence, but a deliberate message, a sign that the cosmos held secrets far beyond our comprehension. I envisioned it as a messenger, a silent envoy from a realm where the rules of physics and logic were rewritten, where life and light took on forms unimaginable to our limited understanding. One night, after a particularly restless day filled with the gnawing questions of what I had witnessed, I found myself standing beneath a vast, star-speckled sky. The cool night air brushed against my face, and I let my eyes wander over the constellations, searching for the elusive spark that had so changed me. For a long while, there was only the gentle twinkling of distant suns and the quiet murmur of the universe. And then, in a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, I caught a flash, a brief, radiant glimmer that danced at the edge of my vision. It was not as bold or as overt as the fireball from that flight, but it carried with it the same haunting sense of purpose, a reminder that the cosmos was still alive with mysteries. I stood there transfixed, feeling an odd blend of fear and fascination. My heart pounded with the realization that the universe was far more dynamic and enigmatic than the tidy explanations offered by science. That glimmer, so transient and yet so profoundly significant, made me question everything I had ever believed about the natural order of things. It was as if the cosmos, in its infinite complexity, was daring me to look beyond the surface of things, to see the intricate interplay of light, shadow, and hidden meaning that wove through every moment of existence. In the months that followed, the memory of that flight became a constant undercurrent in my life. I began to see signs in the everyday, a subtle shift in the colors of a sunset, a sudden, unexplained warmth that crept over me in the quiet of the night, a glint of light that vanished before I could comprehend its source. The golden fireball was no longer just a memory. It had become a part of me, a lingering presence that haunted the edges of my perception. I could feel it in the pulse of the night, in the silent spaces between thoughts, as if it had imprinted a piece of its mystery onto my very soul. I've come to accept that some mysteries are not meant to be solved. that their true power lies in the questions they provoke and the unease they instill. The golden fireball remains a riddle, a fleeting, incandescent enigma that challenges the boundaries of our understanding. And every time I look up at the night sky, I'm reminded of that unforgettable moment when the universe, in a burst of molten gold, revealed a truth too vast and unfathomable for words. I continue to live my life with the awareness that the cosmos is full of secrets waiting to be discovered. The encounter has changed me, instilling a deep-seated respect for the unknown and a persistent curiosity about the hidden dimensions of our reality. And so, whenever I find myself beneath a clear, starlit sky, I pause and listen to the silent language of the stars, to the whispered promises of light that dance in the dark. I know that somewhere out there, in the vast, uncharted reaches of space, the mysteries of that golden fireball still reside, waiting for the next soul brave enough to witness their fleeting, radiant beauty. Redditor 4, I've never forgotten that night from my childhood, a night when the boundary between dreams and reality seemed to blur into something altogether inexplicable. I was young, perhaps 9 or 10, and it was the kind of evening that promised endless possibilities. My best friend was over for a sleepover, and our small, shared world was confined to my bedroom, a sanctuary that overlooked the vast, rolling expanse of Chautauqua Park. My window offered an unfiltered view of the Flatirons that rose like ancient sentinels from the rugged terrain, their silhouettes etched against a sky dappled with the soft glow of a waxing moon. We had been lying awake not from a lack of sleep, but because the night had a certain magic that kept our minds alert. The gentle rustling of the trees, the distant whisper of a breeze, and the rare, intermittent glow of car headlights winding their way up the mountain road all seemed to speak in a language only the night could understand. In that quiet hour, with sleep teasing the edges of our consciousness, my friend and I found ourselves silently watching the mountains, our eyes drawn to the tiny moving specks of light that traversed the darkened road below. I remember the precise moment it happened. A solitary set of headlights, far more vivid than any we had seen before, suddenly halted on the steep, winding road. Its beams shone with an intensity that seemed almost otherworldly, a glowing orb that held our collective gaze as it pulsed in the darkness. There was something mesmerizing about the light, a magnetic pull that defied the simple explanation of an ordinary car. In a heartbeat, the light began to rise, moving upward in a way that defied gravity, as though it were seeking to break free from the confines of the road. Hovering over the peak of the mountain, the light lingered for what felt like an eternity in that frozen moment of time. It was as if the very air around it crackled with energy, a silent promise of secrets that lay just beyond the veil of our understanding. Then, as abruptly as it had appeared, the glowing spectacle accelerated away, so fast that it left a trail of bewilderment and a lingering glow that slowly faded into the night. It zipped over the mountain, disappearing into the dense darkness with a speed that made my heart race in both excitement and terror. The room fell into a deep, shattering silence as my friend and I sat there, our eyes locked in a mutual understanding of what we had just witnessed. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic beat of our hearts in the stillness of that moment. I broke the silence in a trembling whisper. "Did you see that too?" My friend's eyes, wide with both wonder and a tinge of fear, met mine and nodded slowly. There was no need for further words. The memory of that surreal event was too powerful, too raw to be diluted by conversation. In a hurried panic, we pulled the blinds down, as if shutting out the view could somehow erase the mystery we had just witnessed. We retreated to the other bed in my room, a makeshift refuge where we hoped to find solace in each other's presence. The rest of the night was spent in a fitful vigil. No amount of whispered reassurances or childish bravado could dispel the sense of foreboding that had settled over us. Every creak of the house and every rustle of the wind became an ominous reminder of the unknown. I lay there, staring into the darkness, my young mind trying desperately to stitch together an explanation for what we had seen, while my friend clutched her blanket as if it could ward off the chilling uncertainty that had taken root in her heart. I did not sleep a wink that night. Instead, I lay awake, wide-eyed and restless as the first hints of dawn began to creep over the mountaintops. The pale light of early morning did little to chase away the images that danced behind my closed eyelids. The glowing orb, its inexplicable ascent and sudden disappearance, haunted my thoughts with a persistence that belied my tender years. In the cold light of day, I tried to convince myself that it was merely a trick of the light, a misinterpretation of the few car headlights that graced the lonely mountain road. Yet, deep down, I knew that what we had witnessed defied such simple explanations. Over time, that night became a cherished yet unsettling memory, a secret shared between two friends that only grew more enigmatic with each passing year. Life took us on separate paths, as childhood inevitably does, and we eventually lost touch. But the memory of that surreal, unexplainable moment remained etched in my mind like an indelible mark. It was only during my final years in college that fate reunited us. We met again not by coincidence, but by the natural pull of shared history. And it was during one quiet, reflective conversation that we finally revisited that long-ago night. We met in a small, dimly lit coffee shop, the kind that seems to exist out of time, with its muted conversations and the soft hum of background music. Over cups of bitter coffee that did little to warm our souls, we began to recount every detail of that sleepover. The way the moon cast long shadows on the flat irons, the eerily precise movement of that mysterious set of headlights, and the shared silence that had followed its abrupt departure. It all came rushing back with startling clarity. We recalled how, even as children, we both sensed that what we had seen was not merely a trick of the imagination, but something real, something that had intruded upon our safe, innocent world. I listened intently as my friend recounted her own recollections, each word laced with the same blend of wonder and lingering dread that had haunted me all these years. There was a part of me that had tried, as a rational adult, to dismiss that night as a mere figment of our overactive imaginations, but as she described the precise sequence of events, the way the light glowed, then ascended, and finally sped away, I realized that there was no room for such neat explanations. We had both seen it, and the memory was too detailed, too consistent, to be chalked up to a shared illusion. Even now, my adult mind wrestles with the implications of that night. There are moments when I catch myself gazing out of my window at night, compelled by a deep-seated need to reconnect with that fragment of mystery from my youth. The world feels so vast and unknowable sometimes, and I am reminded that, despite all our advances in science and technology, there remain phenomena that defy logical explanation. The memory of that glowing orb, a fleeting, brilliant anomaly against the backdrop of the ancient mountains, serves as a humbling reminder that the universe is filled with secrets, many of which lie just beyond the reach of our understanding. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world is still and the night clings to the edges of consciousness, I find myself questioning everything I once believed to be certain. The rational part of me longs to find an explanation, a misinterpreted reflection, a stray car's headlights, but the memory is too potent, too vivid, to allow for such simple answers. It is as if that moment, suspended in time, exists in a realm where logic and reason no longer hold sway, replaced instead by an ineffable sense of wonder and the bittersweet sting of the unknown. I have often wondered whether that experience was a glimpse into another reality, a brief intersection between the world we know and a mysterious, unseen dimension. Perhaps, in that singular moment, the boundaries between the tangible and the intangible dissolved, allowing a flash of something extraordinary to reveal itself. Or perhaps it was simply a trick of youthful perception, a momentary misreading of the stars and shadows, magnified by the magic of a sleepover and the unyielding power of the imagination. Whatever the truth may be, the memory remains a fixture in my life, a spectral echo from a time when the world was full of endless possibilities. As I sit here now, far removed from that long-ago sleepover, I can still feel the chill of that night in the depths of my soul. The memory of those flat irons silhouetted against a starry sky, and the inexplicable glow of those headlights as they danced above the mountain peak continues to unsettle and inspire me in equal measure. It is a reminder that, no matter how much we grow or how much we learn, there will always be mysteries that elude the grasp of reason. The universe is vast, and our understanding of it is but a tiny flicker in the grand tapestry of existence. I have come to accept that some things are meant to remain unexplained. That night, with its haunting blend of beauty and terror, taught me that the most profound truths are often hidden in the spaces between what we see and what we feel. It is in those moments of quiet uncertainty that we are forced to confront the limits of our knowledge and the boundless possibilities of the unknown. The memory of that sleepover has stayed with me all these years, a silent witness to the fact that even in the ordinary, there can lie something extraordinary, something that defies explanation and leaves an indelible mark on our souls. And so, every time I find myself beneath a moonlit sky, I cannot help but look out the window with a mix of longing and apprehension, wondering if the cosmos might once again reveal one of its elusive secrets. The memory of that night, etched into the fabric of my childhood, remains a bittersweet testament to the mysterious and unpredictable nature of the world, a world where even the simplest sleepover can become a portal to the infinite. Redditor 5. I was alone in my living room that night, the only light coming from the soft glow of a lamp and the steady illumination of the big glass window that dominated the wall opposite my sofa. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the world outside had paused for a moment of introspection. I had always found solace in that large window, its transparency offering an unfiltered view of the fields stretching out behind my house. It was late, the hour when the familiar murmurs of the day gave way to the secrets of the night. I sat there, lost in thought, when something unusual caught my eye. A triangle of lights, distinct and deliberate, was moving over the field. At first I assumed it was just a plane, a relic from the days when an old Air Force base near my house hosted impromptu air shows, parading old or strangely shaped aircraft across the sky. But something about its movement immediately set it apart. It wasn't the smooth, predictable glide of a conventional aircraft. Instead, the lights danced in the dark with an eerie, almost erratic rhythm. I leaned forward, my eyes straining to follow the object's path. The triangle of lights seemed to defy the rules of normal flight. There were moments when it appeared to hover, suspended in midair, as if time itself had hesitated around it. Then, in the blink of an eye, it accelerated with a speed that no conventional plane could muster. At times, it would even change direction abruptly, veering off in a way that suggested deliberate, calculated movement without the graceful arc of a turning airplane. I remember feeling an unsettling chill, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck as I watched the lights shimmer against the darkness of the field. The object's erratic behavior gnawed at my rational mind. I wanted to convince myself it was merely an illusion, or perhaps some experimental aircraft from the nearby base. But the way it defied normal aerodynamics was undeniable. My pulse quickened with each sudden change in its motion, and I found myself gripping the armrest of the sofa, as if bracing against an unseen force. For a long while I sat there, my eyes locked on the mysterious triangle, unable to tear them away even as a sense of dread began to creep into my thoughts. I remember thinking that perhaps I was overreacting, that the darkness and solitude of the night were playing tricks on me. After all, I had seen all manner of odd things before, and sometimes the combination of a tired mind and a quiet house can conjure up images that defy explanation. Yet, as the object continued its unnatural display, pausing, then darting away, then hovering again, the rational part of me struggled to offer a comforting explanation. It was not the steady, mechanical flight of a plane, but rather something that moved with an unpredictable life of its own. Weeks passed after that night, and the memory of the strange, triangular lights lingered in the back of my mind like a persistent, disquieting whisper. I tried to push it away, to convince myself that it was just a figment of my imagination fueled by the eerie solitude of a late night. But then, one evening, during a casual conversation with a friend, the topic turned unexpectedly to unusual sightings. He was laughing about how, on a recent drive, he had caught a glimpse of something he jokingly referred to as a UFO. His tone was light, teasing even, but then he mentioned that he had visited a website that mapped UFO sightings. His words struck a chord deep inside me, and suddenly I remembered that night in my living room. Curiosity overpowered my lingering skepticism, and I decided to check the website myself. I entered the date and location of my sighting, my fingers trembling ever so slightly as I typed. My heart pounded as I waited for the results to load, half expecting to see nothing more than a fluke of coincidence. But there it was, a list of several sightings of black triangle UFOs in my area around the same time. The numbers didn't lie. The more I scrolled, the more it became clear that I was not alone in witnessing something inexplicable that night. Despite the corroboration from these scattered accounts, I couldn't bring myself to fully embrace the notion of extraterrestrial visitors. I had always been a practical person, someone who looked for logical explanations, even in the face of the bizarre. Yet, as I sat in front of my computer, reading about these other sightings, I felt a growing disquiet that undermined my usual confidence in reason. The accounts were too consistent, the details too precise, and the way these triangle-shaped lights moved, hovering, accelerating, shifting direction without a hint of mechanical predictability, was something I had never seen before. I began to replay that night over and over in my mind. The quiet of my living room, the large glass window framing the inky darkness outside, and that triangle of lights moving with an eerie autonomy. I wondered if there was some hidden logic behind its motion, a pattern or purpose that I was too blinded by fear to understand. But the more I tried to analyze it, the more it eluded explanation. Every possibility I entertained, an experimental aircraft, a misinterpreted reflection, even a clever trick of the ambient light, fell apart under the weight of the object's inexplicable behavior. In the days that followed, the memory of that night began to intrude upon my daily life in subtle, unsettling ways. I found myself glancing out of my windows at dusk, half expecting to see that same triangle of lights reappear and linger just beyond the edge of the field. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind against the glass, set my nerves on edge. It was as if the universe had planted a seed of doubt in my mind, a reminder that beneath the veneer of our ordinary lives, there existed mysteries that defied understanding. There were moments, especially on clear, quiet nights, when the sky seemed to hold its breath, and I could almost feel the presence of that strange, hovering object in the air. I started to notice the way the shadows played across the field, the subtle shifts in the darkness that hinted at something moving just out of sight. At times, I even thought I saw a glint of those familiar triangle lights again, only to dismiss it as a trick of the light or a stray reflection from a passing car. Yet the memory was always there, lingering in the corners of my vision, like a secret I was never meant to forget. As I delved deeper into the online reports of similar sightings, I began to understand that my experience was part of a larger, unsettling pattern. The accounts spoke of silent, triangular craft that moved in defiance of the known laws of aerodynamics. They described how these objects would sometimes stop as if waiting, then accelerate away with a force that seemed almost predatory. The more I read, the more I realized that I was confronting something that challenged my entire understanding of the natural world. It was not merely an alien spaceship, as some might have fancifully suggested, but rather an enigma, a phenomenon that existed on the fringe of our reality, elusive and defiant of explanation. I often wonder what these lights were doing over our field that night. Were they merely passing through, a transient spectacle of advanced technology unknown to us? Or were they observing, silently and methodically scanning the landscape below? The thought that something might be watching us from the darkness sent a shiver down my spine, even on the most mundane of days. In the quiet solitude of my living room, with the glass window still framing the vast, unyielding night, I sometimes feel as if the universe itself is whispering secrets that I can never fully comprehend. There are times when, late at night, I catch my breath as I stare out the window, half expecting that same triangle of lights to reappear. I've learned to live with the uncertainty, to let the mystery be a quiet companion in the background of my thoughts. Yet, the memory of that night remains a stark reminder that our world is not as simple as it seems. In the stillness of that moment, as I watched an object that defied all logic and expectation, I realized that there are forces at work that are beyond our control, forces that challenge our deepest assumptions about the universe. I still don't have all the answers. The triangle of lights that moved with a peculiar, unsettling grace that night remains an unresolved puzzle, a fragment of an experience that refuses to be neatly categorized. Despite the rational explanations that one might offer, the memory of its sudden stops, its unpredictable bursts of speed, and its silent, almost deliberate shifts in direction haunt me. It is a reminder that even in a world governed by reason and logic, There are moments when the extraordinary makes itself known, moments that leave an indelible mark on your soul. Now, whenever I am alone in my living room, the large glass window beckoning me to look out into the night, I can't help but feel that the universe still holds secrets that defy explanation. The field beyond, once an emblem of calm and order, now carries with it the ghost of that unexplainable night. I sometimes wonder if, somewhere out there, that strange hovering triangle is still watching, still moving through the darkness, in search of something I can never quite grasp. I have come to accept that some mysteries are meant to remain unresolved. The rational part of me longs for a concrete explanation, a scientific, logical account of the strange object I witnessed. But deep down, I know that not everything can be explained by the limited tools of our understanding. That night, with its bizarre blend of beauty and terror, forced me to confront the limits of what I consider possible. It was a stark reminder that the universe is vast, and that within its infinite expanse lie phenomena that challenge even the most steadfast beliefs. Even now, as I sit in the quiet comfort of my living room and gaze out at the darkness, I am haunted by the memory of that night. The triangle of lights may have disappeared into the vast unknown, but it left behind an imprint of mystery, a symbol of the inexplicable that lingers in the silent spaces between what we see and what we dare to imagine. And so, each time I catch a glimpse of movement in the night sky or feel the chill of uncertainty brush against my skin, I remember that unsettling night and the strange, silent visitor that changed everything. Redditor 6. I remember the first time I truly understood the weight of a secret passed down through generations. It was over a cup of lukewarm coffee in my grandmother's kitchen when my great-aunt, my grandmother's youngest sister, leaned in and began to tell me a story that would forever alter the way I saw the world. Her voice was low, almost reverent, as if the very act of speaking the words summoned memories too powerful to be forgotten. I had always dismissed such tales as mere folklore, the kind of stories that were meant to spook children and spark late-night conversations. But as she recounted that fateful morning in the 1960s in rural Arkansas, I felt a chill run down my spine, a subtle tremor that suggested there was more truth in her words than I had ever imagined. It began on a pre-dawn drive home after a routine errand. My great-aunt had driven my uncle into town for work, a trip that she had made countless times before without incident. The roads in those parts were quiet, lined with dense clusters of trees that whispered secrets to anyone willing to listen. That morning, however, the familiar solitude was broken by something entirely unexpected. As she was making her way back home, her mind occupied with the mundane tasks of waking the kids for school, she noticed a peculiar light dancing among the trees near her house. The light was not the steady beam of a street lamp, nor was it the flickering illumination of a passing car. Instead, it pulsed with an otherworldly glow that defied the natural order of things. Drawn by equal parts dread and curiosity, she pulled over to the side of the road, her hands tightening around the steering wheel as she squinted into the half-light of dawn. What she saw next has haunted her for decades. Hovering at the edge of the forest, about 12 feet above the ground, was an object she could only describe as a flying car. Its form was unlike any machine she had ever encountered. Sleek and silent, its contours outlined by a soft luminescence that seemed to shift with the movement of the trees. In that surreal moment, time appeared to slow, and the only sound was the rapid beating of her heart, echoing in the stillness of the morning. Without a word, panic surged through her veins. She knew that whatever she had witnessed was not of this world, and the instinct for self-preservation overrode any desire for understanding. In a heartbeat, she slammed her foot down on the accelerator, sending her car hurtling down the narrow country road. Her mind raced with 1,000 questions. Even as she drove, the image of that hovering, impossible machine burned into her memory. She didn't dare look back, her only thought being to put as much distance between herself and that inexplicable apparition as possible. A mile away stood my grandparents' farm, a modest homestead that had always been a refuge from the uncertainties of the wider world. Arriving in a state of palpable fear, she burst through the door, calling out for my grandfather in a voice that was as urgent as it was uncharacteristic. My grandfather, a man whose calm and pragmatic nature had long served as an anchor in our family, joined her without hesitation. Together, they drove back to the spot where she had seen the strange light. The darkness of the early morning enveloped them as they approached the area near the edge of the forest, hearts pounding in synchrony. Yet, when they arrived, there was nothing. No sign of the flying car, no lingering glow in the trees, only the ordinary quiet of a rural Arkansas dawn. My grandfather later corroborated that part of the story with a measured tone that left little room for embellishment. He admitted that, although he had not witnessed the phenomenon himself, he could see that my great-aunt's fear was genuine, and that every detail of her recollection was as precise as a well-remembered dream. I have always been skeptical of UFO stories and the wild claims that sometimes circulate in the dead of night, but there was something about my great-aunt's account that was undeniably real. She was not one to concoct wild tales or to rouse the household in the wee hours without cause. Her words carried the weight of lived experience, and in that quiet kitchen, I found myself forced to confront the possibility that there were things in this world that defied logical explanation. In the years that followed, I found my thoughts returning to that mysterious morning with a relentless persistence. I began to notice the little things: a glimmer of unexpected light at the edge of my own vision during twilight walks, the soft rustle of leaves that sounded almost like a whispered warning. Sometimes, when the world was cloaked in the deep silence of night, I could almost hear the faint hum of something not quite of this earth, as if the universe were speaking in riddles meant only for those who dared to listen. At first, I tried to rationalize the incident away. I told myself it was a trick of the light, perhaps a reflection of the early sun on a metallic surface hidden amongst the trees. I considered the possibility that my great-aunt had seen a car or some kind of experimental vehicle, something that in the dim light of dawn had taken on an eerie, unfamiliar shape. Yet, no matter how many logical explanations I entertained, each one fell short of encompassing the sheer terror and wonder that radiated from her words. There was an undeniable quality to her recollection, a vividness that transcended mere fancy and hinted at a truth that lay just beyond the grasp of our everyday understanding. Over time, I began to think of that morning not as an isolated incident, but as a window into a larger, more mysterious reality. Rural Arkansas, with its vast stretches of untamed land and dense forests, had always carried an air of ancient secrets and whispered legends. Perhaps, I wondered, my great-aunt had tapped into something primordial, a glimpse of a world that exists alongside our own, hidden in the interstices of our mundane lives. The idea both thrilled and terrified me. How could it be that in a place as ordinary as the back roads of Arkansas, the fabric of reality might tear ever so slightly, revealing a glimpse of the extraordinary? I carried these thoughts with me as I grew older, often revisiting the tale in moments of quiet introspection. It became a part of my own inner landscape, a reminder that not everything can be neatly explained by the tools of science and reason. The mystery of that flying car, hovering silently in the pre-dawn darkness, lingered like a shadow at the edge of my consciousness, a symbol of the unknown forces that govern our lives. I would lie awake on nights when the wind whispered through the trees and the air was heavy with the scent of earth and old memories, questioning whether the universe was, in fact, far more complex and unfathomable than I had ever dared to believe. Sometimes, in the stillness of early morning, I would find myself retracing the route my great-aunt had taken so many years ago. I'd drive along the same quiet roads, passing by the same stands of trees, each one seeming to hold its own secret in the soft light of dawn. And though I never encountered anything as inexplicable as the flying car she described, there were moments when a solitary beam of light would break through the canopy, dancing on the leaves in a way that defied explanation. In those fleeting instants, I felt as though I were standing at the threshold of something vast and unknowable, a reminder that the world still held mysteries that could unsettle even the most grounded of minds. I have no definitive answer to what my great-aunt witnessed that morning. Was it a glimpse of technology far beyond our time, or perhaps something more enigmatic, a visitor from a realm we cannot begin to comprehend? The rational part of me searches for a scientific explanation, for a natural phenomenon that could account for the strange light and the eerie sensation that accompanied it. But there remains a part of me, deep and stubborn, that clings to the possibility that some things are meant to remain mysteries, whispered through the corridors of time and memory. Now, Every so often, when the sky is a tapestry of pre-dawn purples and grays, I feel a familiar pull, a quiet beckoning that reminds me of that long-ago encounter. I sometimes catch a glimpse of something moving just at the periphery of my vision, a flash of light that disappears as quickly as it appears, leaving behind a trail of questions and a sense of longing for answers that may never come. In those moments, I can almost hear my great-aunt's voice, soft and urgent, urging me to remember that the world is full of wonders that defy explanation. As the years have passed, I have come to accept that some stories are not meant to be fully understood, that their true power lies in the mystery itself. My great-aunt's account remains an enduring enigma in our family's lore, a tale of a strange, inexplicable encounter on a quiet morning that challenges everything we think we know about reality. It is a reminder that beneath the veneer of the ordinary lies a realm of secrets, waiting for the brave or the curious to catch a fleeting glimpse. Even now, I find solace and a strange comfort in the thought that somewhere out there, the universe is whispering its ancient secrets in a language that transcends words. I carry that legacy with me, a quiet acknowledgement that the line between the known and the unknown is far thinner than we dare to imagine. And every time I step out into the early morning light, I do so with a sense of wonder and caution, mindful that, in the vast tapestry of existence, the extraordinary is always lurking just beyond the edges of our understanding. This is the story my great-aunt entrusted to me, a story of fear, awe, and the unyielding mystery of that one unforgettable morning. Though I remain a skeptic at heart, I cannot help but believe that what she saw was real, an encounter that transcends explanation and continues to haunt our family's legacy. And as I move through my days, I hold on to that secret, knowing that sometimes the most profound truths are those that refuse to be fully revealed.